Hello and welcome back to Leadership Tips with Jared. This is a show where we will cover some quick tips to help make you a better leader and communicator. I'm Jared Albrecht, owner of Albrecht Training and Design LLC, and on each episode I'm going to take my life experiences as a military officer and a corporate leadership trainer and provide you with short, bite-sized, practical leadership tips. Tips you can start working on as soon as the episode is over. By taking the small bite approach, you're much more likely to put these tips into practice quickly, and the skills are much more likely to stick, becoming a permanent part of your leadership toolkit. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just taking your first steps into the leadership arena, the intent of this show is for you to take a few minutes, focus on one or two things that you can improve, and then see the positive results. Let's get into today's topic. Today we're going to be talking about OODA loops. That's right, OODA loops. That's O-O-D-A. For those of you who are not familiar with OODA loops, I will explain what an OODA loop is. Some of you know about them, some of you may not. So just quickly, here's the definition of an OODA loop. O-O-D-A. It is a process that we all go through every single day. Hundreds of times, thousands of times a day, we go through an OODA loop when we make decisions, when we do things. So what does it stand for? O-O-D-A. The first O is observe. You observe a situation. The second O, you orient. Orient yourself to the situation you just observed. So your first O is observe. Your second O is orient. The D is decide. Make a decision. And the A is act. Act upon the decision you just made. So the entire process of an OODA loop is you observe something, you orient yourself to that situation, you make a decision, and then you act upon it. You do this thousands of times a day. When you're at the grocery store trying to determine which checkout line you want to get into because you think one will be faster than the other, you go through a OODA loop. You observe the checkout lines, you orient yourself to it. Which ones am I closer to? Which ones are perhaps seem to be moving faster? Which ones have people with fewer items? Then you make your decision. I'm going with lane 6. And then you act, you push your cart to lane 6. That's a very basic use of an OODA loop. We all go through these OODA loops to make decisions every day. Observe, orient, decide, and act. So now that you're aware of an OODA loop that you go through all the time, the key is, and focus up here people, the key is to get the most tightened up OODA loop you can, to be the fastest person to progress through your OODA loop without skipping any of the steps. The good news is we're fairly hardwired to go through all the steps, but sometimes we skip them. Now, I first learned about OODA loops when I was in the Air Force. OODA loops were talked about a lot when it came to air combat. 2 aircraft, each one trying to shoot the other one down. Basically, who wins in a dogfight? The person with the tightest or fastest OODA loop. The person who can observe the situation, orient themselves to the combat, make a decision, and act will usually win the dogfight or any fight they might find themselves in. The OODA loop is so prevalent in Air Force terminology. There is an actual road that goes around Air University, Maxwell Air Force Base, Montgomery, Alabama, where the Air Force sends all their leaders to get trained on more leadership, to become senior leaders. The road that goes around Air University is called OODA loop. It's taken very seriously. Now here we're not talking about life and death and combat, but we are talking about decision making. Solid decision making, rapid decision making. The future belongs to those people with the tightest, fastest OODA loop. How quickly can you process that? So when you're faced with a challenge, when you're faced with something you have to complete, keep in mind your OODA loop. You observe it, you take in all the fact, you orient yourself to it, you decide, and then you act. So what's it like when you perhaps try to go too fast? Now remember, the key is to go fast through your OODA loop. But what happens when you try to go too fast and you skip a step? The first O. If you don't observe what's going on in this particular challenge, be it finding that shortest grocery lane, or be it making a quick leadership decision for your team on the spot, if you don't actually observe what the actual challenge is, you don't know what the actual challenge or the actual goal is, you're lost. At that point, you could be running headstrong and fast, you'd be all thrust and no vector, you're all force and energy, but you don't really know where you're going. So you can't skip the first step. You have to observe. You have to find what the challenge is. The second step, orient. How do I fit into this problem? How does my team fit into this problem? What resources do we have? How much time do we have? That's all part of that second step, orient. If you don't orient yourself properly to the task that you've identified in step 1, which is the observation step, very similar to skipping step 1. If you skip step 2, don't orient yourself or don't properly figure out where you fit and what you have to work with, same outcome as if you skip step 1. You might have a lot of enthusiasm, but the likelihood of you actually attaining your goal and accomplishing your challenge very, very low. So you have to observe your problem or challenge. You have to orient yourself to that challenge. And as a leader, not just orient yourself, but orient your team as well. And make sure your team also understands the observation. Okay, they know what the problem is. They know where they fit. Now you must decide. The letter D. Make your decision. What are we going to do? Now, a lot of people who've been trained to be leaders, we want you to be a leader, we want you to be a good leader, we want you to make fast decisions. And I'm a proponent of fast decisions too. Is there such thing as too fast of a decision? Certainly. That's usually what you get if you don't spend the proper amount of time and observe and orient. I know this is a very two-edged sword here because we do want you to process your OODA loop faster. We don't want you to go too fast and skip steps. So if you don't actually decide, if you skip step 3, the letter D, and you don't decide, then basically you're just frozen. You might get trapped in what's known as analysis paralysis. I'm so caught up in observing and defining my challenge and orienting myself and my team to the challenge that I don't actually make a decision. Definitely want you to make a decision. I'm a big proponent of the phrase, a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. What do I mean by that? I'd rather have my team on a good path to victory quickly than to wait additional time to be on that perfect path. I'll take a good path over perfect any day, especially if the good path is faster. So definitely have to decide. Which brings us to the final letter in the acronym OODA. Act. Actually do something. You've observed. You've oriented. You've made a decision what you're going to do. The final step is simply doing it. Now, obviously, if we skip the final step and we don't act, then we remain unchanged. We don't do anything. We've had a great process. We've observed, we've oriented, we've made a decision, but then we don't actually implement it, and then you've essentially done nothing. You've done a whole lot of work to make no decision at all. Well, no, that's not true. You've made a decision. You're just not acting upon it. So again, the OODA, observe, orient, decide, act. Everyone goes through it. Every decision you've made, your entire life, you've gone through this. Now you're aware of it. You're aware that every situation has the OODA loop built into it. You can actually think about it. Have I observed? Have I oriented myself? Can I make a decision, and how quickly can I act? And the more you practice that, the more quickly you can do your OODA loop. Now remember, the key is to go quickly, but not skip any steps. Not go so fast that you skip one of the steps. If you're able to go quickly, then you will be a fast, decisive leader, making good decisions. That's the kind of leader people want to follow. They want solid decision making. They want fast decision making. They want decision making they can buy into. They don't want frozen leaders that can't make a decision. They don't want leaders who are trying to make decisions without having all the information. They want leaders who can quickly find the parameters, make a decision, move forward. Process that, process it as quickly as you can. And when you get good at it, life will become frustrating because you will see other people who are not good at it. And you will be able to sit back and observe these people and go, man, it takes them forever to get through that OODA loop. So this is a double-edged sword, people. Once you know about OODA loops and you get good at speeding up your OODA loop without skipping steps, your life will actually in some ways become more frustrating because you'll watch other people struggling with it. And I challenge you to help those people. So observe, orient, decide, and act. And the winner any competition is usually the person who can process their OODA loop faster than the other person. And that's a wrap on today's topic. I challenge you to focus on today's lesson of OODA loops. Don't try to change everything at once. Just take today's lesson or even part of today's lesson and practice it, even if the OODA loop concept is too lofty for you. And all you took away was the bit where I said a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. That's leadership improvement. So you don't have to memorize everything, but I want you to take something from today's lesson and practice it. You might be amazed how a tiny change in your tactics can yield amazing results. And by the time the next episode comes out, today's lesson will be a permanent part of your leadership skill set. Thanks for listening. Again, I'm Jared Albrecht from Albrecht Training and Design, LLC. If you'd like to contact me with a question or a comment, or request a topic for a future show, you can find the show in the following places. On Twitter, we are at LTWJPod. On Facebook, we're also at LTWJPod. You can email me directly at Jared, that's Jarrod, at albrichtand.com. I'll spell that for you too. At albrichtand.com. And of course, you can check out our website, which is albrichtand.com. I will see you next episode. And keep in mind, the only person's behavior that you can change is your own. Make that commitment and you'll be amazed at how it changes others around you. We'll catch you next time. This podcast is an Albrick Training and Design LLC production. Copyright 2020. The intro and outro music is provided by Joe November. Check out his SoundCloud at JOSEFLIN99.